Let me show you, Claire McCaskill, some of what we're talking about, this incredible sort of bench of talent. And again, these are just 3 of the folks reported to be under consideration.
These are weird people on the other side. They want to take books away. They want to be in your exam room. That's what it comes down to. And don't, get sugarcoating this. These are weird ideas. These guys are just weird. And it's, they're running for He-Man Women Haters Club or something. That's what they go at. That's not what people are interested in. I think that's what you see that's just so terrifying about these guys like Vance and Trump. Look, they've got their vision of what a family looks like, and I'll defend them to have that. Just don't tell me what my family looks like. I keep talking about the golden rule of small towns is mind your own damn business. Mind your own family. Stay out of our business. And it gets worse than that, though. The policies that they put in place that undermine families.
He said people who don't have children, this is a quote, have no physical commitment to the future of this country.
Wow.
And I just think about how, no physical commitment to the future. Like, when I was deployed to Afghanistan, I didn't have kids back then.
Right.
But I will tell you, especially when there was a rocket attack going on, my commitment to this country felt pretty physical.
Governor, J.D. Vance just said this about you, and these are his words, quote, he compared you to a really bad impression of Barack Obama. What is your response to that?
Is that what he said? That's great. Barack Obama was probably our most gifted orator of my time, so it's kind of a weird insult, I guess. But look, I'll say this about J.D. Vance. It is real hard being honest with the American people when you're not being honest with yourself. J.D. Vance is a total phony baloney. He is the most inorganic candidate I think I have ever seen on the national stage. He doesn't know what he believes, and that is why it is impossible for him to articulate a coherent message to the American people, because he doesn't believe it.
So, Clara, what I'm going to say might not be popular or even in my interest, but it doesn't matter who she picked. Everyone on this list is in a next level league, from the person at the top and in the number 2 spot on the Republican side. I mean, the Harris candidacy is just brimming with enthusiasm and energy, and I think a vivaciousness that the Democrats didn't even expect and the Republicans certainly didn't. And everyone on this list is so solid and so talented that I wonder, I mean, sometimes I'm anxious and I'm checking my phone to see if the news is leaked yet. And sometimes I'm like, oh, they're all great. How are you waiting for this news?
Well, first, I've got to give a shout out to my friend Charlie Sykes. I spit coffee over the weekend when I saw how he referred to Trump, that Trump is in the fat Elvis stage of his career.
I feel like that's mean to Elvis.
I know, but I love that. I love that. And so I didn't want to go any further in this program without giving love to my fellow pundit Charlie Sykes for the fat Elvis. And by the way, fat Elvis is worried, and so is the weirdo he picked as his running mate. Because, this field is pretty damn good. She really isn't going to get in trouble with any of these selections. Now, having said that, I think Yamisha's right. She's going to want somebody that she can feel a personal connection to, that she feels comfortable with. And we have no way of knowing who that is, because we're not in the room when they visit and talk and when she asks questions and he asks her questions. So, I love Tim Walz because he's so plain spoken and relatable. I think Shapiro is boffo and does do something really important in Pennsylvania. Obviously, Pete Buttigieg is one of the most talented communicators active in the political world right now. They're all very, very good. And I don't think we're getting in trouble. I think what's really funny is how people are trying to stir up that there's some big brouhaha in the Democratic Party that we're all fighting over who the vice president should be. In their dreams, we're not fighting over who the vice president should be. It's going to be fine no matter who she picks. Let's go.
Yeah, I mean, Charlie, this was, I think, in the Bulwark today, that the internet is not the real world. Democrats are not actually at war with one another of this election. It relates to, and you know, in the same way that we don't ever lead this program with polls, we don't lead this program with horse race, and we're not going to game out what she gets with one or the other. But I do, in this sort of last news cycle before we know who she picks, I do want to stick with this idea of this massive bench as another accomplishment of President Joe Biden's. I mean, this is the Biden agenda being a magnet, not repellent. This is when you are for bridges and roads and not for injecting bleach. This is what happens to your party. And I wonder, I know the Republican Party is sort of post-inflection point, but I do wonder what happened to all the people who used to care about developing a bench on the other side.
I actually think this is one of the most interesting storylines of the last few years. The Republican Party has been purging its bench. They have been primarying some or exiling many of their best and the brightest. And then we, look up in 2024 and we see which party has a deep bench and the governorship and in the Senate races. And I agree with Senator McCaskill about the fact that the party will come together. It is an impressive group. I have to admit that I am a huge Pete Buttigieg fan. I think that he is the most gifted politician that I can recall seeing in the last 20 or 30 years. Josh Shapiro seems like he is that he has been made for this particular electoral map. I mean, he has won 3 elections in the pivotal state of Pennsylvania since 2016. He was elected governor by 15 points, and he has a 61% approval rating in an absolute must-win state. I have no doubt that everybody's going to come together. I have to admit I'm a little bit troubled by some of the vicious attacks on Josh Shapiro, especially involving Israel. I do think that might leave some scars. I think it makes perhaps the decision a little bit more complicated, but he is a very, very impressive, would be an impressive partner, as would, I think, Mark Kelly in another swing state in Arizona.
You know, Eddie, when this whole sort of process was underway and President Joe Biden made the decision to step off the ticket, my first thought was this is what a healthy body does, right? A healthy organism can take in information from other party leaders, Nancy Pelosi or Chuck Schumer, or, the history books will tell the full story of where that all came from, perhaps his family, perhaps his own conscience. And I feel like the search for a number 2 on the ticket is another sign of a healthy body, a healthy political party that is not sort of slashing and burning one another, that looks pretty deliberate. The other thing I will say, and no one has pointed this out, but the fact that nothing has leaked is a sign of deep respect for the candidate herself and her process. What do you make of this? This is probably the last time we'll all be together before we know who the VP pick is.
Well, Nicole, I think you're absolutely right that it shows that the Democratic Party is healthy, it's vibrant, but there's still some serious fissures. And, like you, I'm sitting here anxious. I think the bench is deep. It's obvious the bench is deep, but I'm also worried. I'm worried about constituencies. I'm worried about the things that have been said about Shapiro and Gaza that Charlie's mentioned and the like. So I think, how can I put this? I think the principle here should be do no harm. Do no harm to the enthusiasm. Do no harm to the young folk who are ready and willing and invested. Do no harm to the base. And part of that involves, I think, and maybe I'm in different circles than Claire and Charlie, I think that involves not kind of billboarding the politics as usual in the pick, if that makes sense. But all this is to say, that's just my anxiety, Nicole. All this to say is that, everything is good. Everything is good, but I'm still anxious, I suppose.
Now, look, I mean, this is part of a healthy body, right? If you're raising a kid, you have to start the language of anxiety, and right? Anxiety is healthy, and some stress is healthy, and you're constantly looking to see when it's too much and when it's, but I think the anxiety is healthy. It's about being in touch with your base, not manipulating them, brainwashing them, and telling them not to believe what they see and not what they hear. I think that's where it comes back, though, to what we're going to learn about Vice President Kamala Harris, because I think, Claire McCaskill, you can argue to Eddie's point, you can argue it either way. She has an opportunity to showcase sort of her strong leader credentials, which are dripping off her. I mean, she's the first politician to say what Trump would do. Yes, it's scary, but basically she's running against a buffoon, and she's not mocking his supporters. She's mocking his cowardice. Why isn't he debating? Because he's afraid to say it to my face. That was her line, I think, on Monday or Tuesday. Why is he going after her identity? She hasn't given 5 speeches about the history of biracial Americans, which is glorious and which would speak to a whole bunch of people. She has really displayed her strength as a leader and a politician. And I think to Eddie's point, there are decisions that might reflect, I know this is out there, but this is who I felt most comfortable with. And there are decisions that would do a different very good thing, which is to say, we've only got 92 days, and if you're a splainin, you're losing. How do you think she balances those two?
I honestly don't think she's going to have to do a whole lot of balancing. I just feel like whoever is selected is going to shine immediately. I think these are all really, really effective communicators, and they are used to communicating to people who don't necessarily belong to their party. Tim Walz is probably in the bluest state of any of the candidates that are being seriously considered. But these folks are from places where you've got to find people to agree with you that don't necessarily call them a Democrat. And that's what she needs right now. Remember, what's happening right now is the party is consolidating our base. She is getting back to comfortable numbers with traditional Democratic voters because they see her as exciting and competent and a leader, and is such a wonderful contrast to Fat Elvis. They just can't help themselves. But she still needs another 2% in these battleground states. And that 2% are formerly double haters. They're people who have voted for both Democrats and Republicans. And what she's got to make sure she does with this selection is communicate to them that I'm not an extremist. And if she does that, I think any of these candidates will convey that. I think she's going to be in a really good position in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan, and even in places like Georgia, Arizona, Nevada, and maybe even North Carolina.